Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue our global fleet management journey. Of course, not every fleet manager is as experienced as Jean-Philippe Carrage, and not every company has the same strategy or goals. But what is common is that every global fleet coin has two sides. The trick is, of course, to see the bright side. Welcome to our expert panel, turning global fleet challenges into opportunities. And to discuss this topic, we have invited three global fleet managers. May I welcome Robert Hitchcock, Head of Global Fleet Procurement at G4S, Michael CUZZO Jr., Global Category Leader Fleet at IBM Procurement Services, and Mark Peabody, Global Fleet Leader Facilities and Services at 3M. Gentlemen, welcome and happy you can join the conference. I would like to kick off with a short introduction round. You have 1 minute to present yourself, your company, and the scope of your global and regional fleet. And I would like to start with Mark.
Okay. My name is Mark Peabody, and I'm Global Fleet Manager at 3M, and we are a global company, and our fleet is in approximately 60 countries around the world in every area, and we have over 10,000 vehicles. So one of what I would say one of our strengths is our alignment with our team. And so I look forward to talking more on this panel.
Okay. Where do you have your biggest fleet?
Yep. Well, if we separate our fleet by areas, with Europe, Middle East, and Africa being the largest. Second largest is in United States and Canada. Third largest in Latin America, and fourth largest in Asia Pacific.
Okay, thank you very much. Michael CUZZO, can you a little bit explain what you are doing and how big your fleet is?
Well, it depends on the client. I'm the global category leader for our group. Our group focuses on the indirect side of the spend. So when we have a global category, when we have a global client and they have things like travel or logistics, and those clients that have fleet, we then partner up with them to help them improve their operations and to take out costs and to raise their maturity level of as how they manage their fleet from wherever they started to a higher point over a period of generally about 5 years. So even though we personally don't manage their fleet, we work with them as if we were another entity of their group.
Mm-hmm. Do you know roughly how many vehicles you are consulting, managing today for your customers?
Well, it all depends on how many we have assigned at the time. We have numbers, quite a few, but some of our clients can range from as little as 1,000 cars, but across 24 different countries, or they could have a very large fleet, upwards of 15, 20,000 vehicles, and also a variety of different kinds of vehicles, everything from a company car all the way to a piece of excavation for a mining operation, or a ready-mix truck, or a heavy-duty tractor trailers.
Okay, Robert, you are working at G4S. Can you detail the scope of your fleet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Robert Hitchcock. So I'm the head of fleet procurement for G4S, working globally at the moment. We've got around 16,000 vehicles globally, heavily concentrated in the UK and Ireland, the European region, and North America. The single largest market is the USA, with around 1,600 to 1,700 vehicles at any one time. But the fleet's rapidly changing all of the time as well, and we've recently been taken over by a company named Allied Universal, and therefore G4S is off the stock exchange and now privately owned American company. So the fleet size is growing quite considerably in that point, and more so in North America. That transition was only done last month, so we're yet to find all of the major details of that.
Okay, so that can be an exciting journey then also for you.
It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, it's going to be great to work with the new company. Very different, obviously, as it's privately owned, and a really great focus for the company on the security management side.
Perfect. Mark, what are the building blocks of your global fleet management strategy? And what would you say is your mission as a global fleet leader?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I started out saying one of our strengths as a global fleet team, and when we really started focusing globally 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. And so having our team structure, and it's a close collaboration between sourcing and facilities as we manage our fleet globally. So each area has a facilities fleet leader and a sourcing fleet leader. And we meet as a team of, it's actually close to 10 people each week and discuss our strategies. So we're in collaboration week after week, actually day by day, but it is a formal, regular scheduled meeting week by week. And we have top-down support for our governance globally. And that's really where we are adding value for the company through our governance of the global fleet. We're helping the local leaders in 60 countries uh, look at areas maybe they aren't looking at or share best practices. We're gathering input and feedback from them to put into our global policy, finding the commonalities of where we can add value and staying less strictly defined in areas where there are local cultural differences.
What are the things that you say, well, there the local teams are not always thinking about? What are the aspects where you say, well, that is where we step in?
Mm-hmm. Giving guidance on consolidating leasing companies, partners, right? Really, these are partners of ours, and they're critical to what we do. Our cars that we are buying from the OEMs or leasing from the OEMs, uh, those on a local level, perhaps the local team is looking at their unique picture, but on a global level, we can leverage value through standardized process, reducing the number of contacts, helping leverage, single points of contact at the global level to help overcome challenges at the local level. So, reducing the number of touch points that we have at a local level might not feel super value added to begin with, but in the big picture, it does add value.
Okay. Robert, for you at G4S, what would you say is your mission?
Well, the mission is to give, obviously, cost-efficient and sustainable fleet management across the group. I think that the best way to describe how we do that is we break the strategy down into four major pillars. So that would be your cost management side, the environmental side, the biggest part, which is the MI and data management of that, and obviously also the safety and compliance, which is the first one I should have mentioned. So the major one for us is the safety and compliance. So once we've got those four pillars across all of the markets, we have to recognize that no one region is the same. There's no one way or one route to get to that strategic goal in improving all of those four pillars. So what we try to do is build a project portfolio for each of the regions that's feasible and sensible for that region. So by doing that, we have to talk to the local operations. We have to understand the challenges, the differences in maturity of those markets, and really try to build that project pipeline with the local operational leads and procurement leads within those markets. So the major part for us is really understanding what challenges they have, what level of maturity they're at, and what we can actually feasibly do.
Michael, how easy is it for you, because you are advising other customers in terms of how they can optimize global fleet management, how they can deal with suppliers, how easy or challenging is it for you to impact the building blocks, the strategy of those customers? Am I right that I assume that they plan their strategy and that you have to execute, or is it that you can also influence their strategy?
It's a little bit of all of that. The implementation piece, we do take we take that challenge when it comes to how best to approach it. But when we back it up to the strategy, we back it up to the idea of giving them an idea of where they stand in relationship to other clients. One of the most common questions that I get is, what are other companies that are in our industry doing today that we're not doing. So that's one of the pieces that we help with them. We help them with. The other piece is where the possibilities are. I call them bookends. You know, they may be in the very beginning part of their maturity level with are they practicing or are they leading? And so we give them an opportunity of understanding where they stand and where they could go and what are the steps that'll bring them there. We could walk into a company that I start with a list. And believe it or not, I ask them, do you have a list of your operating vehicles? And I'm sure that if I ask either Mark or Robert if they have a list of the vehicles, because of the maturity level of their companies, I'm assuming that they have it, and they know what they have, and they know how old it is. They know how many miles or kilometers are on them. But many times the lists are not there, and so that tells us that they're not managing and they're not measuring to a level in which they could. And then there are companies that over the years that we've worked with them are ready for some more complicated and the connectivity piece of their fleet that maybe they couldn't do it in year 1, but they could do it in year 3 or year 4.
Okay. Would like to continue again with Mark. Mark, one of the biggest challenges, but also opportunities global fleet managers have is about cost efficiency. Knowing that you have a fleet across different regions, how do you manage and how can you manage TCO globally and across the regions? Do you have a best practice for that?
I can't say that we necessarily have a best practice for that today, and this is probably part of our evolution as a fleet team. But I can say that we are looking at that from a global perspective in terms of, as part of our consolidation of partners that we're working with, of course, that becomes part of the measurement of who we partner with. Of course, so there's a lot of decisions that we make that influence that ourselves based on the culture of our company and what we're driving towards, around safety or environmental and sustainability. But then who we partner with also impacts that greatly.
Mm-hmm. Robert, you have quite some experience in Europe.
Yes.
You are now going into a global fleet management role where you would like to optimize your strategy. How do you think that you are going to tackle that TCO control that you are looking for?
So I think we've already started to try to look at how to do it. I'm not going to sit here and say that we know exactly how we're going to do all of the TCO, but the major part that you have to do is rely on the resources that you have. So for me, you can't do this on your own. It's one of these things you're not going to have the data to be able to understand each and all of the markets and all of the differences between them. So what we try to do is use the resources we have, whether that be the strategic partners that we've got across the globe, within the leasing, within the OEMs, within some of the insurance companies and accident management services that we use across the globe, but also of the local operational leads and procurement leads, as I said. So we've got a wealth of knowledge across the business that are employed locally, and it's not for me to step in and pretend that I know more than them, as I don't. I think it's for those to advise the best way to move forward, to understand exactly how that TCO works in that region, and then to try to devise a plan in how to measure, manage, and reduce that.
Okay. Michael, according to you, what is the most challenging region to manage when you are a global fleet manager?
Regionally, I'd probably say Latin America, only because of there's not a lot of development, not a lot of infrastructure, there's not a lot of opportunities for competition. So that's what we have experienced. I think even then going into Europe, country by country, we see different levels of technology and different levels of engagement with their suppliers. But I think Latin America is probably the biggest challenge today.
Is that also your feeling, Mark, if you look at the global fleet management approach you have?
Yeah, I think both Latin America and our Asia Pacific area, especially where there's just not a lot of the big leasing companies don't have a grand presence in some of the Asia Pacific countries.
Okay. Michael, how do you deal with supplier harmonization, knowing that not all leasecos, not all fleet management companies are present everywhere?
That's really a good question, because one of the challenges that we have met is, number one, getting their attention, getting the attention of the global side of a company that also uses partners. You may have a fleet management company in the U.S. that partners with someone, but they like to act independently. And so our challenge is really changing the industry, changing the outlook, and to say we want to run this, help this company run their fleet on a global aspect. And so we need their partners to stand up along with their U.S., say, counterparts, so that the technology is the same. Not necessarily the pricing. We understand the risks are different. We understand the level of inflations within the countries are different. But getting them to understand what our approach is and eliminate the ones that can't come to the table and help us meet our objectives.
Robert, Mark already explained some elements about the importance of the team, stakeholder management. In your opinion, what are some tips to secure stakeholder alignment and stakeholder engagement?
Well, I think for me, within the way that I look at each of the major projects that we do and where we need stakeholder alignment, I think there's three types of stakeholders that I generally look at. One would be the senior stakeholders, the senior management or corporate leaders within the company, which you need to get the buy-in at the start of the project to sign that off, to say they agree with the route that you're taking. The second layer would then be the people in the operations within the business who this is going to affect their day-to-day if you're changing something or changing the way of working. And then the third is the strategic partners that you choose to help you along with that journey. So I think to get alignment of all of those, the first thing we do is get the sign-off from the senior management to be able to undertake the project. And the second is to bring in the key operational leaders of each of the regions that we're going for. So I've just done a major project across three of our key regions, UK and Ireland, Europe and North America. And what we did was set up a sort of council that we met weekly with the leaders or the operational leaders of those regions. When I say operational leads, I mean the fleet managers and the fleet procurement people in each of those regions. And we had a weekly call to engage with them exactly what we're doing on this project. At the same time, we would then choose which providers we're going to be inviting in to help with this project. And at points, we will invite them into those operational meetings so that everybody's aligned, everyone understands. And when we take the key milestones have been achieved and when we take this for sign-off, it's not a surprise for the senior managers.
Good. Mark, do you have anything to add on what Robert already mentioned in terms of stakeholder alignment? I know it's very important for you and your company.
Yeah, it's so critical because we overlap with HR, compensation and benefits, and then insurance, legal, and then we've really found with some of our strategic initiatives lately that there's a lot of legal involvement because there's labor laws and contracts that are involved that become roadblocks to implementing certain projects. I'll give one example. Okay, we said no kids can drive the company car, right? Because we insure the company car. Well, if you start to implement that in countries where it's a benefit and employee has a right to use the vehicle how they choose, of course, this makes it difficult. So it does definitely involve employee, legal, HR, and quite honestly, we want to be market aligned with our initiatives too. Right? We want engaged employees that feel well compensated when they're working for our company, so they're attracted to working at 3M. So there's a lot to balance, and we have a lot of stakeholders that the communication and everybody will make mistakes along the way, right? So I think the key is to learn from the mistakes and to continuously improve.
Okay. Michael, there are of course a few trends that we see happening regionally and in the future probably also globally. Let's start with fleet electrification. What is your opinion about that on a global level?
Well, you may be sorry that you asked me, because I guess I'm not 100%. Number one, I'm 100% behind the idea of a cleaner environment. I'm 100% behind the trend or the movement. Okay, but I'm not 100% convinced that everything makes sense when it comes to, you look at the fact that as we push towards this, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and there's a lot of industry changes that have to happen. Myself, if I was an owner, it would be a tough sell for me, from any fleet manager that came up and said, look, I want to spend more money per vehicle because it's the right thing to do. I want you to spend, let's say in US dollars, $30,000 for a vehicle that, if I had a combustible engine, would be $20,000. So I'm going to spend more money. Okay, that part, they have to answer that as to why do you want to spend more money. So the issue is where can the manufacturers then take out the costs to bring it as a level set when it comes to that. Then there's things as simple as the distance on a tank of gas or on one charge. Do I get the same distance? And then what do I do with the vehicle for the 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours that it needs to charge? I'd have a hard time convincing anyone in production that their vehicle needs to sit for 8 hours, as opposed to 15 minutes to refill it. So the operational pieces are missing. The infrastructure is not there. Mm-hmm. There's a number of things that I think at some point, and then bottom line is 80% of the 80% of the energy to create the electricity is still fossil fuel. So until we get to the point where we're 20%, which is probably not going to happen till for another 30 years, maybe, we need to talk about that. And still, I agree with the direction, but not everything makes sense to me. And okay. So there are things that need to be decided.
Okay. Is there someone who has a more positive view about fleet electrification? Robert? Mark?
Sure. Look, I understand all of the points raised there. I think there is stuff that needs to be considered, but I think they can be overcome. I think it depends on the business that you're in and the shift patterns that you're doing as well. If the vehicle's sitting for 8 hours, if it's a nice vehicle, then if it's not a nice vehicle, still sit for those 8 hours and recharge, right? So if that doesn't change your productivity or the rate in which you use that vehicle, then I think there is a opportunity to use that. I do agree on looking at how that electricity is produced, but I think it still displaces the emissions out of highly urbanized centres with a lot of people. So I think there are some really good positives that can come out of electrifying the fleet. And for us, we've looked at it, and we have electrified the UK fleet quite considerably. And we've launched a new policy that is electrification pretty much, and no ICE vehicles other than LCVs. So I think there is points in which it can work. I think the benefits on a TCO are evident, although that the capital cost is higher. The cost of running these vehicles is so much significantly lower, and with the tax breaks and grants, there's a real commercial upside that you can see in moving to that electrification if done correctly.
Okay, with Mark, I would like to continue. I would like to go from electrification to mobility, smart mobility, alternative mobility. Also there are a few regions that are a little bit at the forefront. We see some countries in Europe. We also see in APAC some megacities. There are some cities in the United States and so on, where new mobility, alternative mobility is emerging. How do you see that as a global fleet manager?
Yeah, good question. And for sure, it's in the future of part of fleet management, but also part of our global travel and expense organizations within our company. For us, that's further out in terms of our strategic initiatives. So we've spent, I wanted to have a little moment to talk about the sustainability, because in fact, our group, our fleet team is road mapping our sustainability we're creating a sustainability roadmap today. We are in the middle of a couple-month project, and we've mostly gone through, and defined how do we think we are going to transition our fleets. In fact, have had 70 country leaders provide individual feedback over the last 2 weeks to our team to tell us how they will transition, because our company has made a corporate commitment to be carbon neutral by 2050. And the data that's been provided back has been wide and varied, and it's really interesting. It's fun to be on this edge of this transformation, as CO2 will reduce as we switch to battery electric vehicles, which is really the needle mover, right? Battery electric vehicles and other mobility options. So the two are somewhat hand in hand here. And one of our fleet leaders actually wrote back and with his input that he believes that the fleet, as we see it today, won't exist in the future. And this is a really progressive thinker, and it will be car sharing in the future. Even an employee who has tools to load into a vehicle, our fleet won't exist in 30 years from now, but he will book a car for the day that he needs it to go visit his clients. So I love that sort of thought. And then we have other areas, depending on the culture and the geography of, we don't think we're moving to electric vehicles at all, even in 30 years. We have a lot of natural resources available, and why would we do that? So it's fun to get those various inputs and then put the roadmap together.
Indeed. Michael, you have been in the industry since quite a few years. What would you have done differently if you could? Is there anything that you say, well, I thought that this would be something that would work out in that way, but finally this is something that probably also fleet managers need to avoid doing?
My role is a little bit different. I'll say that, and this will be related to basically the trusted advisor type of role. So I think if I was to look back and say what would I have done differently, I think I would, and this is more of not so much difficult to admit, but standing by your recommendations. There are times when a client would like to say, this is the direction that we're going, and this is why we manage this way, this is how we manage our finance, whatever. And we need to stand behind our training, behind our principles, behind what we think is important to take things like costs out or improve processes. And it's not always not always an easy message to deliver, but I think if I regret anything, I'll regret the times when I did not come out and say, I understand why you want to go in this direction, but let me kind of tell you why I think you need to consider other directions. It's not always the best news to deliver, but at the same time, I think when you're given that opportunity, they pay us for a reason. They don't pay us to agree. They pay us to be honest and open and to deliver the news no matter what it is. And so I think that's what I would do differently.
Good. Mark, what would be your advice for global fleet managers that are just starting their journey?
Connect with the industry, make a strong team, get strong team in place with champion and support from your executives. And then work, and I will say that our team, one of the things I've enjoyed about our team is that we really haven't had top down saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, but it's been our team looking at the data, looking at what we have today, and identifying the most valuable ways that we can make an impact for the company. But you need to have team, and you need to consider the local team's input strongly when making decisions.
Robert, what makes global fleet management so exciting and so fun for you?
Well, I think at the moment it certainly is. There's a huge amount of change in the market at the moment, and we just don't know which way that's going to go. So that's a really exciting part of the job currently. And the other part is that if you can manage and get the opportunity and the privilege to manage anything globally, you've got such a variation across all of the markets, such a variation in the types of people that are in the industry. And for me, it's just a great industry to be in. Everyone that I've met has been helpful. really helped me along my journey, and I think it's certainly an industry that seems to support each other. So I think it's always been nice to work in the fleet management space.
Good. Mark, Michael and Robert, thank you. Thank you very much for your valuable insights and for sharing your experiences. We need to close the session here. Stay well, stay safe.